But lately, we've noticed in their transparency, their attestations that were forced upon them, by the way. They're not doing this willingly. They don't like doing it. They are forced to quarterly do attestations that they have to show to the public. Don't get confused. Don't let them pretend they're doing this to be the kings of unrivaled transparency. They're doing it because the New York Attorney General said, if you don't do this, you're fucking toast, bros. So they decided to, play by the rules, at least in that sense. But what we've noticed is that their assets, and we're not the only ones who have noticed this, Patrick McKenzie, who you can follow at Patio, Patio 1111 on Twitter. Patrick McKenzie has repeatedly pointed out that their assets over liabilities are essentially like less than 1%. If you're a stablecoin, if your assets over liabilities dip below like 1, if you get below $1 of assets over liabilities, if you go to 0 or -1, that makes you insolvent. The interesting part here is that Tether has gone from a market cap of roughly 80 billion to 66 billion. Tether has apparently sold all of their commercial paper for some reason. I mean, it was all great. Apologies. They've sold a bunch of their commercial paper, which they shouldn't even be doing because it was such perfect, beautiful commercial paper, and it was hardly even a risk, they said. But to get critics like us to shut up, apparently, just because of people like us, they're going to move away from this really beautiful commercial paper that's giving them this great yield, and they're going to move it all into U.S. treasuries. So they're selling off all of this essentially riskier asset class with higher yield and selling it into a lower yielding, less risky asset class. Meanwhile, their market cap is dropping precipitously. Oh, also, let's not forget, they have equity in Celsius, which has now pretty much gone belly up. I think we can all agree. It seems like it's going to go bankrupt here. So they have equity in companies going bust. They've lent out to 3AC. They've lent out to Celsius. They've lent out to X, Y, and Z company that's probably dead in the water already. And yet, this DiStefano guy has managed to keep their assets over liabilities almost exactly the same throughout all of this. It's unreal. It's unbelievable. It is amazing. Amazing.
It is literally unbelievable. You're right. And there's a few different things here. There should be a cost for them rolling these assets, right? The commercial paper they've rolled over, which we can see because the duration on the attestation suggests that they are still purchasing new commercial paper. They're rolling some portion of it and not just taking the cash and moving it into treasuries. So there's a cost associated with that. There's also the changing rates environment that has been occurring like underneath the bonds, commercial paper, and treasuries they own. As rates have gone up, the face value of the things they own we would expect would go down, and their long-term position will improve as they roll into the new higher yielding stuff because their overall yield will go up. But the stuff they're holding as the rates go, its face value goes down, and they're in potentially a more challenging position to roll it. And so, there's several of these factors that contribute to... And the bond market has gotten hammered because of the rising rates and bond ETFs back part of Tether. You mentioned Celsius equity, Infinite Fleet equity from Samson Mao's little game. You mentioned the loans to Celsius. We don't actually know if they've loaned to 3AC. We just know 3AC was getting a bunch of tethers issued to them. We do know that they had, in the past at least, issued loans to Babel Finance, which is another lending platform that shut off withdrawals. And we have not heard that Tether liquidated that loan. And so, you're right, there's a bunch of things in here that seem like we would expect their value to sometimes change. Yet, Tether, who says they update the transparency page every single day, shows basically the exact same shareholder capital cushion. This isn't the only problem with Tether's transparency page, by the way. We've been pointing out for years, and one of our auditor friends also pointed this out for years, that the number of quarantined tethers described on the Tether transparency page does not match the number on the blockchain. I've added up the ones on the Omni blockchain before, and it is millions more than they list on their transparency page, which gets at something we discussed back when we talked about the Tether CFTC settlement, right? Which revealed that Tether's record keeping was inadequate. They were not keeping good track of their reserves. They were not keeping careful track of the tethers issued and redeemed against those reserves. And so Tether has a long history of inadequate bookkeeping, of suspicious numbers on these statements. And I think that kind of takes us back to why they've had so much trouble finding an auditor. And like, they had hired an auditor who supposedly had agreed to do a full financial audit way back in 2017, right? They had announced to the world the name of the auditor. Then, when they separated from the auditor, their excuse was not that people were calling this auditor and annoying them. Their excuse was this auditor wanted to do excruciatingly detailed procedures. And because of that, we weren't going to go forward with it.
That's how an audit works, by the way.
Yeah.
That's how a fucking audit works, guys. I don't know what to tell you. When you get audited, they go through your financials.
And like,
excruciatingly, especially if you're a bank with a dollar derivative, essentially.
Yeah.
Like if that is your company, yeah, expect a rough audit to see what you're doing with your dollar derivative.
Just to double down on that, last year when they went on Deirdre's show and promised the audit, Stu ended up tweeting out something that was very strange, which said the audit would be coming soon, that the 2018 fiscal year audit would be coming first, and that there would be no pineapple pizza in their statements. Which is a really weird statement for several reasons. One, the first auditor they engaged was for the 2017 financial year, not 2018. During 2018, they were engaging in a series of conflicted transactions with Bitfinex involving hundreds of millions of dollars moving between the two companies without documentation or contracts. And, like, why in 2021 were they promising that the first thing they were going to provide was the audit for 2018? And then finally, why was that promised a year ago and now they're going on TV and saying there's no timeline and they can't even tell us who the auditor is? What happened to whoever was supposedly doing the 2018 audit a year ago? Why is that a question that they can't answer? Yeah. Why 2018? I'm going mad.
Yeah, well, for all this posturing that they consistently do, this is not new to us. We've been following this space long enough that we've seen them do this a million times before. But I do want to say this, that I think they have the same cocky bullshit attitude as Suzu at 3AC, Kyle Davies at 3AC, Alex Mashinsky at Celsius. These people are broke now, and no one knows where they are. No one knows what's going on with them. Nobody's heard from these people in weeks. Because as cocky and annoying as they were, they lost it all real fast, and that cocky attitude is gone. They're gone. And who knows? Maybe Tether is being cocky because they're totally up to snuff, and they're going to prove us so wrong with all these beautiful audits from a Big 12 auditor. I don't think so. I just don't believe them anymore. They have lied to us about 10 times too many times for me to take a single word they say as honest. They have, if nothing else, proven that they won't be honest unless a government agency forces them to be slightly transparent. They're not going to tell you the truth. Don't believe their lies, as my boy in Memento would say.